Hey guys, it's Twig here, coming in with a little tutorial on how I like to set up my Apache AH64D for night operations. Now, by no means am I trying to say this is the best or like the most optimal way to do it. This is simply how I do it and what works best for me. So we're going to go ahead and start in a cold Apache here just before nightfall so we can see our dash and everything, and I can give you a little rundown of how I like to set everything up. So first I'm going to go ahead and pause it here, and I'm going to show the controls I'm going to be using. These are going to be some of the most common controls that you're going to be using for night operations. The first one is going to be toggle goggles. That is to toggle your night vision goggles on and off. The next thing you're going to want to make sure you have queued is your sim brightness control knobs, decrease and increase. This will allow you to adjust your night vision brightness, or this is actually going to be for your headpiece. And this is going to control how bright your headpiece is. You're also going to need, that's where it is, gain goggles up and down. You're going to need this so that you can adjust the gain of your night vision to adjust for any bright light sources that might be in the area that are kind of hampering your vision. By turning this up and down, you'll see once I demonstrate it, it'll allow you to see more clearly in certain lighting scenarios. Next, you're going to want to have your flare level control knob, decrease and increase. Now, most of these controls are in the cockpit and can be manually adjusted, but when you're flying at night in the dark, these are things that you want to be able to have queued either to your HOTAS or to your keyboard or controller, allowing you to adjust on the fly. This is not something you want to be doing while looking out the side of your cockpit trying to adjust your flare while you're mid-flight. And then there's also the flare gain control knob, up and down. You're going to want that as well, because that's going to be paired with the other one. And then you also are going to want your IHADS show queued, so that way you can turn your IHADS monocule back on after switching from your night vision goggles. Sometimes when on equipping your night vision, by toggling your goggles, it'll automatically go back to your IHADS, but sometimes it does not. So it's always good to have that queued up so you know exactly what you need to press. That's going to be, I think, it for that. One other button I did queue to my HOTAS to make this easier is when I do my alignment for my heads-up display, my IHADS, I have the MPD push button, right MPD push button, L6, on my HOTAS. This allows me to line up my eye with the reticule here when I'm syncing up my IHADS with my night vision sensors, so that way I can not have to look down to push a button on the MPD here. I can simply push it on the HOTAS. And you'll see that in demonstration here in a moment. Let's go ahead and close this. And let's go ahead and get things firing up. Get the APU going. I'll go ahead and get the IHADS out of the way for now. Close my door to save some sound. Now, once I have power, then I can start messing with some things. So, in night operations, it's always good to turn the brightness on your MPDs down just ahead of time, so I can go ahead and click this over to night, and this will kind of dim it. Right now, you won't see it much, but in a little while, when it starts to get darker, you'll really notice it. You can turn your brightness down here. And then you can also change the video brightness, which can help on some scenarios depending on what you have displayed, such as your TSD, or if you have a video background for your gunner pilot on the screen. Let's go ahead and just fire up the right engine, get that going. Alright, well, while that's firing up, first you're going to want to line up your heads-up display or your IHADS with your sensors on your helicopter. The best, not the best, the way I do it, and I think is the only way to do it, is you go to your weapons page here by clicking on WPN. Go ahead and give you a close-up here. And you're going to want to click on bore sight and then IHADS. And now it's ready to line up your IHADS with this little reticule here. So make sure you pull up your IHADS and make sure you have your console brightness turned up. That you can find right here. It's this guy. If that's turned off, this reticule will not be visible, and you'll wonder why it's not there, so make sure that you turn that up. So first, what you want to do is you want to line up that dot in the center of your cursor right here. And this is where you need, once you have it lined up, you have to press the NPD button 6 here. It's hard to do when you have head tracking to be able to look down and click on this with your mouse. So this is why I have it queued up to my HOTAS. Let's go ahead and get it lined up here. Excuse my head tracking is not the best. It's pretty cheap, but it works. Alright, that is now aligned, so let's go ahead and fire up the second engine. Get that going. Go ahead and turn on my windshield wipers here since it's raining. Now that we have bore-sighted our iHads, if you go right here, you'll see night vision select mode. Okay, come on. My head tracking is such a pain in the ass. If I turn my eyes, it likes to turn my head. It's weird. Fix, norm, and off. There are 3 positions for this switch. This one is fairly important. If you switch it to normal, you'll see the screen come up on your iHads. Now, one way I can tell if I lined up my iHads properly with the sensors is if you look in the background there, you can see how the image displayed is actually not perfectly in line with the building there. You see that? If I turn this off, you can see those stacks right there don't perfectly align with this. Now, it's never going to be perfect, but you want to get it as close as possible. And so that's where you can go ahead and try it again if you aren't comfortable with where it's at. You can hit iHads here on the bore sight page on your weapon page again. Line it up with the dot. MPD 6. And now it looks even worse. Fantastic. Let's try that again. It does look even worse. Interesting. Well, it's actually, so one thing you have to take into mind, the further you cant your head to the left or right, the further this image is going to be off. And that's just kind of part of how it works. So as I move my head around, the image kind of moves. This isn't perfectly accurate, at least it's not working perfectly accurate for me right now, but it'll be good enough at least for spotting targets and hitting targets too if you're, if you can set it up better than I just did. Alright, we are currently at low enough oil pressure. Let's go ahead and get my engines wound all the way up. Alright, we are good to disable the APU. Alright, so now that we have our iHads lined up, let's go ahead and turn this back on. There's 2 modes for this. There is norm, and then there's fix. In norm, it'll track with my head, and the sensors will follow and look wherever I'm looking with my head. This is really handy when you're flying in the air and you want to see things through your helicopter here and see the ground or targets down below you. Now, if you are in a different situation, which I'll demonstrate in the air in a moment, you can switch it to fixed. This will keep the sensor set looking straight forward. Even as I look around, it'll follow the helicopter's nose wherever I'm pointing the nose of the helicopter and allow me to see what it is seeing directly ahead of it. This can be handy when you want to see the terrain ahead of you while you're still looking down at the MPDs, which may have a display of your target, so you can have multiple views at once. It can be a little confusing to explain, but once you see it in practice, it's pretty cool. It can be really helpful. So let's go ahead and switch this off for now. Let's get back to our weapon page here. Check our TSD. See how the TSD is kind of bright here? This is where you can adjust your video and turn this way down and even off. Personally, if I don't need the map for reference, I will generally at night turn that completely off. As long as I know I have accurate waypoints that I either place down myself or replace in the mission editor, I can rely on those. I don't need the map. Especially at night, this can be really bright and really distracting if you're using your night vision. So next what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch the iHads back on. And I'm going to go to my FLIR knobs that I had you look at earlier. They're right here. FLIR gain control. You'll see I can adjust it here with both ways, and you'll see how it affects it here. What I like to do in when there's still light outside and I can see, is I'll turn the gain way down to the point to where hot targets typically stand out. There's a way to do it just right. Right about there. So now only warm targets are typically going to show. It's not just going to show everything, hence why I don't see the ground. It's only showing the fence, the buildings, anything that the sun was on that was heating it up earlier in the day. Go ahead and turn that off for a moment. Now I can demonstrate the goggles. Let's go ahead and pull those up. Even on a bright day like this, I can adjust this with the goggles gain control so that I can even use them in dim lighting like this. It's obviously not preferred because it is a blurry vision, but when you're flying in dim light and you need to be able to see, but you don't want all that clutter on your eye, you can simply use your goggles. It's great for taking off, landing, maneuvering between buildings and such, and giving you a pretty clear vision at quite a distance without having to worry with adjusting your FLIR gain up or down to get a good picture at any distance. This just generally gives you a better picture. Kind of turn that back off. And see, this time it did turn my IHADs back on. If you need to, you can adjust the brightness of your IHADs with the control that I showed earlier. Let's see what it's called again. The Sim Brightness Control Knob, or CCW decrease or CW increase. This will allow you to adjust the brightness of your IHADs. This can be great when you're using the FLIR here, so it's not overwhelmingly bright. For example, here we go, look at this. That can be quite distracting, especially once it gets dark outside. So we can tone that way down, get that to a nice soft image to match the FLIR that we have in the background here. Finding the right adjustment for your FLIR brightness and contrast is something you're going to have to play with and get experience with. Depending on the distance and the heat of the targets and the terrain is where you're going to get your best results. So there is no perfect balance or perfect place to set this. Also, as you move your sensor up and down at different distances, the brightness may change quite drastically, and it can really help just trying to find a medium while you're on the ground at a certain distance. For example, if I try to find something further away, you see how bright it is. If I look at something closer, it gets a lot darker. This is something that you're going to run into when you're in flight, so you will be adjusting this on the fly quite often. Alright, now that we're good to take off, I'm going to go ahead and lift into the air here. And we're going to go ahead and see if we can see anything in this darkness. Gotta give it quite a bit of power when we're coming up surrounded by buildings like this. Alright, nice and smooth. Now look at that. What a beautiful thing it is. Being able to look through the helicopter to spot targets and spot infantry vehicles moving between buildings through the cockpit of your helicopter is a really cool experience if you haven't done it already. I highly recommend trying to learn how to do this. It's so helpful. Now I'll start adjusting my FLIR as I'm in the air here and you'll see what I mean. If I turn this way down, I can adjust for hot targets. So now it's simply showing the hot sides of buildings. Or I can adjust it so it shows basically everything. This will not be very good if you're looking for a hot target, like let's say that vehicle there. You want to adjust it so it's about there, so hot targets really stand out. Now you can really see him driving by. Now this isn't necessarily the best for finding cluttered targets or targets amongst clutter because again, even a hot target inside all these buildings will be nearly impossible to spot. That'll take some skill. Now if we switch over to night vision goggles here, you'll see what I'm saying. It's not as clear of an image, but I can see the mountains off in the distance there just as well as I can see a building right next to me. And that is where having the goggles is nice to have. There we go, back to our IHADs. And that's about it. I just kind of wanted to show how I do it. This was an unscripted little video I just wanted to put together. I'm sorry if it's a little confusing and maybe you didn't understand it, but I just kind of wanted to show what I do and how I set up my Apache for night operations. I know it's not exactly perfectly dark out here, but it shows that it doesn't have to be pitch black night for these sensors and this understanding of how the helicopter works to be useful. This can be used in many different scenarios such as bad weather, cluttered environments, forest, and if you tune your sensors just right and get your FLIR just right, you can get hot targets to really stand out in specific environments. And again, also being able to spot targets through the cockpit of the helicopter is quite an experience if you haven't done it already. Because you can just look, oh look, there's a target, and shoot. Of course we're on safe. Let's go ahead and try again. And there you go. That is one of the most fun things you can do with an Apache, is finding a target in a cluttered environment at night, spot it, identify it as a threat, and efficiently take it out is really fun. I know that's kind of the whole point of DCS, but that is, in the Apache, something you can do that you can't do in many others. I think there's only a few aircraft that have something like this, like such as the A10 has night vision in its IHADs, which is pretty awesome. I don't think they call it the IHADs in the A10, but it's whatever. I'm just a casual player. I'm not some military know-it-all. I don't know all the terminology. I'm just here to have fun and share the fun and experience and knowledge with y'all, hoping that we can get more people into playing this. This game, DCS, and many other milsims like it have so much to offer, and there is so much to learn, and that can be really cumbersome and overwhelming for people. My head tracking's going crazy. But it is so much fun, and it is so rewarding once you figure it out. I can tell you from experience, after hours of trying to learn how to laser guide a GBU with an FA-18, the first time I accurately hit a heavy target and took it out was such a rewarding experience. I wanted to start doing tutorials and little videos to show you guys how I do it, the best way that you can get into it easily without having to watch a 45 to 1 hour long tutorial of all the systems and their in-depth complexities. Just showing the basics of this is what you need to know to be able to use these systems and apply them in a mission, real-world mission scenario. It may not be as efficient as the best milsimmers out there, but you can still have a lot of fun with it. So, hope you enjoyed this little messing around tutorial. It wasn't very official. Again, it was unscripted. I just wanted to throw this in here. So, hopefully it helps you guys out. Thanks again for stopping by. This has been a little tutorial with Twig.